Another resources that I'm finding plentiful here in the Ozarks is there is plenty of chert, or if you want to call it flint, similar thing, but typically in North America we have chert, which is just basically just as useful. So for all intents and purposes it's really kind of the same, but in a couple good pieces like that. But basically I'm looking for anything that has a sharp edge, and flint and chert, it has kind of that glass-like ping. Another way you can check it obviously is if you're carrying a carbon steel knife, is just to see if it'll create sparks. And when you're using flint and steel fire, what you're doing is using a harder material, in this case the chert. It's harder than the steel. You're going to remove small bits of pyrophoric metal off of there. It's a rapid oxidation thing, so once it's exposed to the oxygen, it'll spark. So that's another good way to check and see if you've got a good rock. And if you've got a good rock that sparks, then throw that in your haversack, because you can use that to, you know, light charred material. There's a number of different things you can use off the wild, off the landscape, if you know those. But for the most part, you know, you can char natural material, and you always have a way to create a spark, you know, that ignition source to get a fire going if you had to. But always on the lookout for at least one good piece to throw in my haversack, and that coupled with my carbon steel knife is a great way to actually get a fire going. So I'll probably keep a piece of this just to play around with. Again, looking for that ping, looking for one with a sharp edge that throws sparks really well. That's got a nice edge on it. So I'll just test that real quick. That was not as good. That one's pretty good. So that is going in my haversack. This is another fire resource that I just can't bring myself to walk over anytime I see it in the woods, and that is punkwood. It's useful for making char, and it's just something I can't bring myself to pass up. But you know, you've got different stages of decomposition happening here in this log, and what punkwood is just wood that's decomposing. When it's most useful for fire is when it's basically all 100% spongy, like this. Like this is a great piece of punkwood. All spongy, there's no hard woody material left in there. And that is good punkwood. Here's some more right here. But the way you test it is, you know, just kind of look at it and squeeze it. It should feel like a kitchen sponge. And it can be wet, that's not such a big deal. You're going to dry that out when you're actually cooking the char. But if you can find it dry, then that's great. Typically when it's laying down, because it's so absorbent like a sponge, it tends to soak up moisture even from the air, and it maintains a little bit, but the drier the better. But like this stuff is still kind of crispy, like it's not ready yet. You can just leave that. And some other woodsman or woman another day can use it. That's some pretty good punkwood that I'm going to collect and maybe char that, play around with some solar. It's still a little hard, but that's probably plenty right there. Good rule of thumb is when you're collecting char, you know, understand that it's going to shrink down to about 25% of what you've got. So, you know, keep that in mind. But this is plenty. I'm going to put that in my tinder bundle bag. I'll put that in my Sammy pouch right along with the cedar bark, and I've got a good full tinder pouch.